Hey, I wanted to talk about integration in this video. And integration, as it refers to the subject of this video, is the process of gleaning lessons from life, from the various experiences that make up our lives. And in this period, it is perhaps more important than at other times. It's always important to learn your lessons in life, to examine what you're going through, sort of, if possible, step outside yourself and see what it is that you've got to learn. And the lessons are individualized. Each and every one of us goes through life, and if you want to think about it that way, when we begin life as souls, well, a new life as souls, right? When we incarnate, we have like a to-do list, a big list of things that we have assigned ourselves or that were assigned to us to accomplish in this life, or to learn, or to do, to go through. And those experiences teach us lessons. Perhaps now, as we're going through this time, which I maintain is a time of transition between eons or periods, cycles of time, as we step into the new eon, because we are the transition team, so to speak, we are the people actually going through this shift. The lessons that we are supposed to be learning during this period will not only be for us, but they must be passed down to future generations. So they're more important than the lessons of past generations, perhaps. I had a realization last night, one which I'd had before, time and time again. But last night it was more poignant than ever before. And it was this, that we must be grateful for the lessons that we're being taught right now. For everything that we're going through. And that we must also be grateful for all of the lessons that were taught to past generations in order to get us to this point. This very interesting point in human history. A point or a period for which I came into this world and for which you came into this world. All of us who are here now, incarnated on this earth, in this plane of existence, to be here and now. And so in as much as we want this time to end, this period of transition to be over with, so we can move on to the new age, because it's so full of bad memories and bad experiences and the evidence of evil and oppression and financial slavery, and even the other kind of slavery which still exists in parts of the world. We have human trafficking and sex slavery, and just the good old-fashioned slavery still happens. We have wars, we have famines, we have droughts. We have all of the things that have plagued us throughout human history. As we arrived at this point in time, so you say, well, how can we be grateful for these horrible, these nasty experiences? It's because they were designed to be that way. They were scripted ahead of time. Not on the earth plane, I'm talking about the celestial planes. The souls that were going to go through them agreed to go through them ahead of time. The main actors were chosen. They knew what they were supposed to do. Most of them did it. Some of them went off the script and did nastier things than they were supposed to do, for which they will be held responsible. But all of these things are part of a grand design. And this is another thing that I maintain, and I've said in my videos over and over, that there's a greater force in charge of all of this. Call it the source, call it God. It is all part of a divine design, divine plan that uses both good and evil in order to drive the evolution of humankind forward. Things have turned pretty nasty, I agree, in the past, and they're pretty nasty nowadays as well. But all of this nastiness is designed to get us to the point where we know what we don't want anymore. And so we get back to what I said in some of the first videos that I made in this series. And that is, each and every one of us must know what they want from life, and they must spend 10 or 15 minutes every day reflecting upon what they want out of life and what they want out of this earth. What is the ideal? What is the human ideal? What is your ideal? What is the ideal for this earthly plane of ours? Spend that time on a daily basis, and the world will change in an instant. If enough of us do it, because remember, this is about collective consciousness. It's not about me or you willing it to happen. Enough of the human race must want this to happen, must imagine it every day, must visualize it, must ask for it. Enough of them must do that. And when they do it, it will happen. It doesn't have to be everybody. It doesn't even have to be the majority. But enough. I don't know what the number is. But let's not try to count, right? Let's, as many of us, try to partake in this simple exercise. What is it that we want out of life on a daily basis? What are the lessons that we must learn out of our own individualized experiences? That's how we grow. That's how we do our homework. That's how we learn. That's how we evolve as souls and as people in this life. And I realize most people don't learn this anywhere. They don't learn it in school. They don't learn it from their families. They don't learn it from their churches. They don't learn it from their secret societies where they're taught how to do other things, how to prolong the status quo, how to prop it up, how to strengthen it, how to take advantage of others, how to get rich at the expense of others. All kinds of things are being taught in those places that should not be taught. And so humanity's gotten to be so twisted that the promises and the oaths that are made in those secret societies and secret clubs count for more than the oaths that one takes for his or her country, count for more than the promises that one makes to his or her family. And that's really screwed up, because it should be the other way around. Family first. Your spouse first, your children first, then the others. Then comes your neighborhood, comes your city, comes your region of the country, your country, and then the world. Then everyone else. But it's your family first, always. That's the way it should be. But that's not the way the people, the leaders of this world, are being taught to act. And so it's no wonder that we find ourselves in these situations where one's allegiance lies elsewhere, where one isn't guided by the ideals for the human race, it's guided by secret agendas. And yet, we must recognize that this is all part of a grand plan. We must. We must, and we must be grateful for the lessons, and we must strive on a daily basis to figure out what those lessons are for us. And one of the lessons, and this is something that I've said over and over in this series, and I've said it in this video as well, one of the lessons is we must learn what we do not want from life, what we do not want from the human race, what we do not want from the world, what we do not want from our governments, what we do not want from businesses and companies and jobs and all of those other things that are, or that have been part of our society, of our civilization, of our organization as people into entities, into social entities. That is definitely one of the lessons. You know, when we come into this world, and I've said this before in this series a few times, we are covered, well, on this plane of existence is covered by this thick veil that separates us. It's a veil of separation between the planes of existence. And for this density of ours, this dimension, this earth plane, let's just say the world as we know it, the veil is very thick. It's almost impenetrable. It's very hard to get through. It's very hard to have the knowledge and the insights and the guidance and the connection that is so readily available to us on the other planes of existence as souls. When we incarnate, we lose all of that. Well, we lose it in human form. Our soul isn't contained just in our body. Our soul is multidimensional, but in this human form, we don't have that. We're covered by the veil. And so, it's so easy to get frustrated. It's so easy to judge. It's so easy to look around you and be dominated by the desire to punish and to do away with certain situations. But it would behoove us to remember that we're still covered by the veil. And so we don't have not even a fraction. We don't even have a grain of sand's worth of the truth, the whole truth that's out there outside this plane of existence. We don't know anything of the grand plan. We don't know anything of the design of the situations that we're in. And so I believe that's why in quite a few of religions quite a few religions and quite a few books of wisdom we're told that we shouldn't judge. And that's something particularly hard for me to accept. But it's something that I more or less have to accept. And so must each and every one of us. We don't have the whole picture, and it's painfully obvious every single time we sit down to think about something that we don't really know what's going on. We don't know the motivation of someone else. Why are they doing this? It's easy to assume it's just part of an agenda, or it's easy to assume it's just something done to spite us or who knows what, but we don't know. We don't know what we don't know. We don't even know if what we know is worth knowing. We don't know what we know, and we don't even know what we don't know. It's the more you learn, the more you realize there's so little that you know. And perhaps with this human mind, we can't ever get to the point where we know enough about what's going on in order to have it make sense, you know? So, it's a difficult truth to accept, but we must judge less and we must appreciate the lessons more. That does not mean that we do not stand up for our rights. That does not mean that those who step over basic common laws and other human laws, human rights, don't get punished or should not get punished. No, that's not what I mean at all. There are consequences for everything, everywhere. On this human plane of existence, those who engage in crimes incur consequences, or should incur consequences. Not only here, but they also incur them on the other planes of existence. So it happens. And I've spoken about this in other videos as well. There is definitely a judgment, and there are definitely consequences after death. Very much so. So don't worry about it. Everyone gets their due, whether good or bad. Don't worry about it. Just focus on yourself. See to your own life. And do the work every day. Learn the lessons. Spend the time visualizing the ideal for yourself and for the world, asking for that ideal from the divine, from the source, and it will happen. I don't think the kind of situation we're in is solved by protests. I don't see ourselves getting out of this with even with revolts. I just don't see it, because even if the revolts aren't stopped, the establishment is so entrenched everywhere that the new governments that are put in place would be quickly infiltrated and corrupted again. Because people are people, they're fallible, they're corruptible, easily so. Unless we undergo, each and every one of us, a consciousness shift, and unless the human race, well, not as a whole, because I don't think everybody can do it, but the human race, in a significant part, undergoes a shift in the collective consciousness to the point where each and every one of us begins to see the world through better lenses, with better eyes, and begins to act more in line with, with the ideals for the human race and for the world, the ideals that I keep telling you to focus on every day, to visualize, then I don't see us getting out of this. So, while it's neat for people to go walk the streets and chant certain things, and it certainly lets out steam and helps you vent your frustrations, unless we each do our homework, this stuff will keep going on. Remember, we must learn our lessons, and one of the lessons is that we must change. We must strive, each and every one of us, on a daily basis to learn our lessons, to do the work. And if we do not change, then we're going to be presented with the lessons in different formats over and over and over and over. So you look around you. in the picture that's being presented to you now of the world as it's planned for it to be, is this the kind of world you want to have? A world with ever-growing inflation, a world with you having less money in your pocket every day, a world where it's harder and harder for people to meet their expenses, to pay for their utilities, to buy their food, to handle their transport. A world where people have less freedoms, less and less, where they're locked down in their homes, where they're not allowed to move from place to place, or where they have curfews as if for their children. A world where more and more restrictions are put in place. A world where the government monitors more and more of your activity, where they get to control your money, where they can step into your account and freeze it every time they want to. Where they say, you're not allowed to handle any more transactions. Your money is frozen. It's now in our care. Is that the kind of world you want to have? A world where medical treatments are forced on you. Even unsafe medical treatments, they're forced on you against your will. Where you're threatened with loss of job or ostracization from society if you don't undergo a medical treatment. Is that the kind of world you want to have? Is the kind of world that you want to have one where you are forcefully chipped and your movements tracked? And you might say, sure, that's already being done through the phone. Yeah, but it's one thing to have it done with your phone, which you can leave in your home. And it's quite another to have it done through a chip inserted right at the base of your skull, which incidentally is what Elon Musk is working on. You know, that billionaire that everyone loves? That miserable scoundrel. Yeah. It's also something that Bill Gates stated openly that he wants to do. He wants to put chips in everyone so they can monitor them everywhere. Is that the kind of world you want to have? What about this crazy world where people are more and more and more divided through various issues, such as this manipulated racial tension now, where you have all of these grifters advocating for all kinds of fake issues, race issues, or you have these other grifters and advocating for all kinds of gender issues that are non-existent. If everything just went on peacefully, if people were simply allowed to get along with each other, we would not have race problems anymore. We would not have issues with people who were of a different sexual orientation or viewed their gender differently or wanted to change their gender. We frankly, as people, if we're allowed to get along with each other and if we respect each other, all of these issues just disappear. They go away. Color issues, race issues, ethnic issues, sexuality issues, they all go away if we just respect each other. But instead, we're being divided. We're being manipulated into hating each other, into arguing with each other, into blaming each other. We're being whipped up into a frenzy, into a froth by people who are profiting from this. You know, it's the same old adage, divide and conquer. If we're divided, It's so much easier for the establishment to control us, to manipulate us. And so these are all lessons that we must learn as a human race. And we must be grateful for these lessons because they were brought to us during this critical time of transition. All of the nasty stuff that's been swept under the rug has been brought up for us to look at, to examine, to learn from, so that we can pass these lessons down once we learn them, and once we stop doing all of this stuff, once we stop engaging in this stuff, then we could pass it down to future generations. Because these tensions existed, make no mistake, that's why they're being brought up. If these tensions didn't exist under the surface, none of us would be getting worked up over them. We'd look at all of those efforts and go, what the heck is wrong with those people? We get along just fine. There's no issues here. But there obviously are issues for us to work through. Otherwise, this stuff wouldn't keep showing up. Now, lest some of you get the wrong idea about respect for each other, there's a good expression that everyone should remember, that your freedom ends when it infringes upon mine, and vice versa. And so that applies to pretty much every aspect of what one considers freedom. For example, sure, you're allowed to listen to your music, to whatever music you want to hear. But as soon as that music leaves your property line and enters upon the property lines of other people and starts bothering them, that means you don't respect them. That means they're allowed to then claim their rights for you to stop bothering them. It's not the other way around, where you can play your music as loud as you want to because you're free. It doesn't work like that. It's the same way with pretty much every aspect of one's life. You're free to do anything. Excuse me, there's a little feather that was floating in the air. It stopped on my nose. Pretty much everything that people do, they're free to do unless it infringes upon another person, upon another's property, or it harms another's property, or it harms another human being. So yeah, freedom for all, but it also comes with a huge amount of responsibility, which is something that people don't understand. The majority of people don't get this. They just want freedom, and instead of freedom, they spell it freedom. It's just F-R-E-E-D-U-M-B. It's freedom for most people, not freedom. So, something worth remembering. So more questions for people would be something like, if you were free today, if you had full sovereignty right now, what choices would you make in your life? If you had unhindered access to everything, to all of the resources on earth, well, you know, you had your share of them. You had your share of the wealth of this earth, which every one of us as human beings on this planet ought to have a share of everything on the planet. That's only fair and natural. If you had your share, what would you do with it? Would you make the right choices? Or would you squander it away? Would you engage in the same behaviors that are causing problems in your life and in the lives of others right now, and the same behaviors that have been causing problems for other people and for people in general throughout history? You see, it's people wonder, why don't we have full sovereignty right now? It's because they're not ready for it. Most of humanity is not ready for it. And so the lessons continue. They continue until enough people learn them. If we were all ready for graduation, this school would be over. We'd be into the summer holidays right now. And I'm not talking about the actual school, obviously. I'm talking about the school of life. But you see, in order to step into this new age, we must graduate. We must learn our lessons and pass some tests. And obviously, because the lessons still continue out there, there is no graduating class yet. I don't know how much longer they'll continue. But they are going on. And it's frustrating because for the past few weeks, I've felt as if we're stuck in this holding pattern. You know? Frankly, if you think about it, ever since December, I think, we've been stuck in this holding pattern. More or less. I mean, some things have changed, but it's been the same spiel throughout the world. Yeah, the seasons changed, but it's the same spiel. So when does this end? When enough of us have learned the lessons that we must learn. We must integrate. Integrate and evolve. Change for the better. Yeah. So be grateful for the lessons. Be grateful for all of the bad stuff, because it's there in order to get us to a better place. And when we've learned our lessons, the bad stuff will just disappear. It will simply fade away. It will become a part of history, part of our history, and it'll be there for future generations to learn from. Yeah. I certainly wish we would progress faster. Because these lessons that we must learn, obviously, I think you realize, aren't about the corruption of the things we hold dear, aren't about the corruption of our own selves. These lessons are about realizations, about ourselves, about our true nature, about the human ideal, about ideals for this world, for this planet. They're about strengthening our values and helping us to remember values that we've forgotten, principles of life that we've tossed to the side because we became so entrenched in this worldly way of thinking, in this hamster wheel of life that we've created for ourselves through the so-called civilization. So it is most definitely not about stepping over any of the true values of life. It's about remembrance. It's about forgiveness. It's about learning and teaching, and learning and teaching, and visualizing and learning and teaching, so on. Because each of us, through our behavior, is actually teaching others. Whether we say something or we don't, Those around us see it. They look at our example, and it speaks more than the words that we say. So, integration. Yeah. All right. Thanks for watching. Till next time.